Many years after the war had ended, a delegation of Japanese businessmen visited Raleigh, North Carolina. During a reception, the host proudly pointed toward the harbor. "That's the battleship North Carolina. We're very proud of her." After a brief moment of silence, one of the Japanese guests replied gently,
"The last time I saw that ship, it sailed into our harbor and flattened our city."
History remembers the end of World War II in the Pacific as a story of two cities and two bombs. But before Hiroshima and Nagasaki became bywords for atomic annihilation, another finale was being written in fire and steel along the very shores of Japan. Yet amid the blood-soaked battles waged across the islands and the cataclysmic nuclear finale, there lies a nearly forgotten chapter of history, a relentless and methodical campaign where the colossal battleships of the Allies, for the first time since the war's dawn, closed in upon Japan's shores and unleashed a tempest of fire upon the very heartland of their foe. This is the story of the final bombardments, a prelude to devastation and a strike that revealed a harsh truth to the Japanese leadership. May 1945 saw the banner of victory unfurled across Europe. Yet on the opposite side of the globe, the flames of war still raged fiercely. The Japanese Empire, though cornered and beleaguered, fought back with a terrifying and fanatical resolve. For the Allied forces, ultimate victory loomed tantalizingly close, yet the path to that triumph was fraught with relentless peril. The harrowing lessons carved from blood-soaked battles across the Pacific Islands revealed a grim truth. A direct amphibious assault on the Japanese home islands could prolong the war well into 1946, unleashing casualties beyond all conceivable measure. Before the secret weapon known as the atomic bomb was weighed on the scales of history, the United States Navy had already devised a plan, steeped in the traditions of classic naval warfare, to unleash the might of colossal battleships upon Japan's coastal cities, pulverizing their war industries into ruin. In the sweltering months of July and August that year, a relentless barrage of aerial bombardments and naval artillery fire was unleashed. This was a brutal campaign, a grim prelude to the ultimate devastation to come, and its effectiveness surpassed even the highest expectations of its architects. The American campaign across the vast Pacific, a strategy of capturing strategic islands in a step-by-step advance towards Japan, was a relentless saga. Yet by the close of 1944, the tide of war had irrevocably shifted. The capture of the Mariana Islands in November granted the Americans strategic air bases, launch pads, powerful enough to send B-29 superfortresses soaring over the Japanese homeland itself. Not long thereafter, the final bastions of the Imperial Japanese Navy were swept away in the fierce Battle of Leyte Gulf, fought off the shores of the Philippines. In early 1945, American Marines stormed ashore on Iwo Jima, seizing yet another vital airbase for the bomber fleets. The next objective, and the bloodiest of all, was Okinawa. The Battle of Okinawa stood as a staggering display of overwhelming military might. Over 1,300 warships, including the British Pacific Fleet, forged an unyielding steel ring encircling the island. From 40 aircraft carriers, warplanes were launched for an astonishing 3,000 individual missions, while 10 battleships and 9 cruisers unleashed more than 13,000 shells upon the entrenched. On April 1st, 4 American divisions set foot upon the island, igniting a grueling 3-month battle to seize control of 486 square miles of terrain. Though the Japanese launched fierce counterattacks, every effort was rendered futile against the overwhelming might of the US forces. Yet, the cost of victory was staggering beyond measure. Nearly 170,000 American servicemen took part in the battle, and over 8,000 of them would never return. A casualty rate soaring to 35% on Okinawa became a harrowing lesson, a grim trial that cast a long shadow of doubt over the very feasibility of launching an assault on the Japanese home islands themselves. Within the upper echelons of American command, strategic doctrines clashed. While some Navy planners, like Admiral Halsey, championed a relentless campaign of blockade and bombardment to starve Japan into submission, others, including Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King, argued it made an invasion unnecessary. In contrast, General Douglas MacArthur and the Army pressed relentlessly for an early assault on Kyushu, the southernmost island of Japan. Admiral Chester Nimitz, commander of the Pacific Fleet, also concurred with this strategic vision. From that moment, Operation Downfall, the largest amphibious assault in human history, was conceived. The first phase, codenamed Operation Olympic, was slated to strike Kyushu in early November. The second phase, Operation Coronet, would be the invasion of the main island, Honshu, scheduled for March 1946. Based on the staggering casualty rates witnessed at Okinawa, analysts projected that the assault on Kyushu alone would demand a staggering force of 767,000. Confronted with this looming threat, the Japanese General Staff devised the defensive blueprint known as Ketsu Go, which translates to Operation Decisive. Their plan called for the mobilization of 3 million soldiers, alongside the entire civilian population, united by a singular objective: to inflict maximum casualties upon the American forces, thereby shattering their will to fight. For the strategists in Washington, these were merely figures etched on paper. Yet for the Allied soldiers amassing across the Pacific, these were not abstract figures. A post-war analysis estimated that Operation Downfall could have resulted in 1.7 to 4 million US casualties, including up to 800,000 fatalities. They had absorbed the harrowing tales of Japanese cruelty inflicted upon captured airmen, harboring no illusions about the enemy's capacity for mercy. A Marine officer, hardened by the fiercest battles fought across the islands, recounted that, upon glimpsing the map and the invasion plans for Japan, he was compelled to abandon the command tent and retch uncontrollably. Another soldier, assigned the grim duty of beachmaster, the man responsible for directing troops and traffic on the chaotic landing beach, faced a life expectancy measured in mere seconds, no more than 2 minutes. They understood that every inch of Japanese soil would be defended not only by the military, but also by civilians, rigorously trained to fight with sharpened bamboo spears. They knew this would be a bloodbath of unprecedented scale. They awaited only the command to strike. By mid-1945, Japan found itself plunged into utter despair. The United States Army Air Forces relentlessly unleashed devastating bombing raids upon cities and industrial centers from their bases in the Marianas. Simultaneously, Allied submarines and surface vessels severed nearly every vital trade route, strangling Japan's war economy with an iron grip. A severe fuel shortage had rendered the majority of the Imperial Japanese Navy's warships immobilized within their harbors. Meanwhile, the Imperial Japanese Army Air Force was compelled to retain its remaining aircraft, conserving them for the decisive battle on the home islands. Amidst this tense backdrop, Allied naval commanders resolved to unleash a decisive preemptive strike, harnessing the overwhelming firepower of their battleships to bombard Japan's coastal cities directly, in the hope of compelling the enemy's surrender before resorting to more drastic measures. On July 1st, the United States Third Fleet, commanded by Admiral William Halsey, set sail from Leyte Gulf in the Philippines. Their mission? To launch a direct assault into the very heart of the Japanese Empire. To prepare, submarines were dispatched ahead to scour the coastal waters of Japan, meticulously searching for hidden mines. Simultaneously, B-29 and B-24 bombers undertook reconnaissance missions, capturing aerial photographs of airfields and industrial complexes. The fleet's main carrier strike group, designated Task Force 38 and commanded by Vice Admiral John McCain, was entrusted with executing the initial strikes. On July 10th, their aircraft launched assaults against installations encircling Tokyo. Then, on the 14th, Task Force 38 advanced northward, commencing air raids over Hokkaido and the northern reaches of Honshu, regions previously beyond the reach of American bombers. The assault met with scarcely any resistance. American forces effortlessly sank 11 warships and 20 merchant vessels, inflicted damage upon dozens more, and obliterated at least 25 Japanese aircraft. From Task Force 38 emerged a specialized bombardment unit, designated Task Unit 34.8.1, under the command of Rear Admiral John F. Shafroth, Jr. Their objective? Kamaishi, an industrial city in northern Honshu, home to one of Japan's largest iron and steel mills. At precisely 11 o'clock in the morning, aboard the flagship USS South Dakota, a signal flag was hoisted, bearing a message heavy with symbolism. A bitter reminder etched into the annals of history. Never forget Pearl Harbor. The Japanese General Staff had foreseen this assault. Yet, rather than deploying their reserve air forces in retaliation, they made a calculated strategic choice: to remain silent. They awaited a massive amphibious landing and were unwilling to squander their dwindling resources on a naval engagement. It was a deadly, deliberate silence. Around midday on the 14th, the American battleships unleashed a relentless storm of fire upon the Kamaishi steelworks. Aboard the flagship USS South Dakota, as the first 16-inch shells were loaded into the barrels, a gunner would later recount to his son that this was far more than a mere salvo. It was the moment his father's story was etched into history, a direct and resolute reply to Pearl Harbor. A relentless storm of firepower tore through the industrial zone, including over 800 rounds of 16-inch shells, each one weighing as much as a small car. Though the majority of these projectiles struck their targets with deadly precision, the sheer force of the explosions ignited the entire town in flames. Time magazine captured this moment with haunting clarity. For 2 relentless hours, the thunder of heavy artillery roared. The Japanese coastal batteries replied only with a faint whisper. The sacred soil of Japan had been violated. This event shattered the myth of an invincible Japan. That very night, a separate force, including the battleships USS Iowa, USS Missouri, and USS Wisconsin, unleashed its fury on Muroran, along the southeastern coast of Hokkaido, devastating further industrial complexes and urban centers. Standing aboard the flagship USS Missouri, Admiral Halsey conceded the stark vulnerability of his fleet to aerial assault. In later years, he would recall those 6 hours as the longest, most harrowing stretch of his life. The relentless assaults persisted throughout the closing days of July, obliterating the remnants of the Japanese Navy. Yet the hardened militarist leadership of Japan stubbornly refused to surrender. On July 26th, the United States, Great Britain, and China issued the Potsdam Declaration, demanding Japan's unconditional surrender, warning that failure to comply would result in the utter destruction of the Japanese homeland. When it became apparent that Japan had dismissed the ultimatum, President Harry S. Truman and his advisors faced a fateful decision: to unleash the atomic weapon. On August 6th, the first atomic bomb unleashed its devastating fury upon Hiroshima. 3 days later, on August 9th, a second bomb reduced Nagasaki to ruins. That very same day, the Soviet Union launched its assault on Manchuria, extinguishing the last flicker of hope for the Japanese Empire. In the waning days of the conflict, naval assaults persisted with relentless fervor. On August 9th, the very day Nagasaki was bombed, Kamaishi was struck again. This time, the American battleships were joined by the British battleship HMS King George V and the New Zealand cruiser HMNZS Gambia, a symbol of the Allied resolve to see the war to its conclusion. This time, Japanese forces mounted a staunch resistance, yet their efforts proved futile against the overwhelming firepower. On August 10th, the Emperor of Japan announced his intention to surrender, though negotiations continued regarding the terms of the Potsdam Declaration. The final, unconditional surrender was formally announced on August 15th. The war in the Pacific, and with it the Second World War, had finally come to an end. News of the surrender rippled through the fleets like an electric current. The initial response was not a triumphant cheer, but a stunned silence. Then, the unimaginable unfolded. Across the transport ships poised for orders, the toughest soldiers, those who had endured the brutal crucibles of Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, began to weep. A witness recounted how the entire ship, filled with Marines, collapsed onto the deck, weeping like children. Even the most battle-hardened officers and sergeants could not conceal the tears of deliverance. They did not weep for victory. They wept because they were alive. The decision to surrender did more than spare the lives of millions of soldiers and civilians on both sides. For the thousands of Allied prisoners forced into brutal labor camps, it was the very line between life and death. They had reason to fear. Secret orders, later discovered, had been issued to Japanese POW camps. In the event of an invasion, all Allied prisoners were to be executed to prevent them from joining the fight. It was the act of surrender that ultimately saved them from certain annihilation. The aerial bombings and naval bombardments in the war's final weeks, though overshadowed by the advent of the atomic bomb, played a decisive and pivotal role. They did more than shatter Japan's military might. They revealed a brutal truth. To subdue an enemy resolved to fight to the death, conventional military power alone often falls short, ushering in a new, more terrifying era in the annals of human history.